Hello everyone and welcome to the finalist announcement for the 2020 Cundill History Prize. My name is Peter Frankopan. I'm the chair of the jurors this year. We're live across social media platforms today for this announcement, so hello if you're watching on Twitter, hi on Facebook, hello on Instagram, or hello on YouTube. From wherever you are watching in, I'm delighted that you're with us for the announcement of this year's 3 finalists of the world's leading history prize. Now, let me remind you that each of the 3 historians announced today is a winner, each of them receiving $10,000 as well as a Recognition of Excellence award. And following the announcement here today, we're celebrating the 3 finalists in much more detail on the Cundill History Prize website. So do please visit the website to explore these fantastic titles a little bit further. Judging history competitions is extremely difficult, and it wasn't easy to make the decision drawing on a large number of fantastic books. If you joined us for the shortlist announcement last month, you'll know that we as a jury decided to put 10 onto our shortlist instead of the usual 8 because the books this year were such high quality. So let us remind ourselves now of the books, all of them outstanding works of history, and here are the 10.
Roderick Beaton, Greece, Biography of a Modern Nation. 2020 Cundill History Prize juror Anne Applebaum said, Roderick Beaton keeps returning to the question, what is a nation? It's a book that even if you're not Greek, you will find really interesting because it will make you reflect not just on Greece, but on your own country as well. Vincent Brown, Tacky's Revolt, the story of an Atlantic slave war. Vincent Brown brings the story of Tacky's Revolt to life using personal memoirs, testimony, and digital cartography. Cundill History Prize juror Elijah Gould said, this is analytical history at its best. It's also a beautifully written narrative. William Dalrymple, The Anarchy, the relentless rise of the East India Company. Juror Sujit Sivasundram said, this is one of the most important stories of modern colonization. It also speaks to a broader argument about the nature and power of corporations. William Dalrymple's book is not just a page-turner, but a work of art. Richard M. Eaton, India in the Persianate Age, 1000 through 1765. Richard Eaton's is a book that will certainly cause disquiet for those who seek to purify or isolate India's history by way of religion, culture, ethnicity, or politics. It is a magnum opus. That was Sujit Sivasundram once more. Kim Gaddis, Black Wave, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the rivalry that unraveled the Middle East. This book asks a deceptively simple question, juror Lise Doucette said. What happened to us? It's a fundamental question, and Kim Gaddis answers it by looking at an old history in a new way. This is history which makes headlines today. Carrie Greenidge, Black Radical, The Life and Times of William Monroe Trotter. Elijah Gould confessed, the hardest thing for me about Carrie Greenidge's wonderful book was that I couldn't skip anything. I had to read every page, kept wanting to know what was going to happen next. Rashid Khalidi, The 100 Years' War on Palestine, A History of Settler Colonialism and Resistance, 1917 through 2017. Lise Doucette, it's history and autobiography. It's political as well as personal. Rashid Khalidi's new interpretation of an old conflict is brought to life by his compelling, impassioned narrative. Paul Lay, Providence Lost, The Rise and Fall of Cromwell's Protectorate. This book will surprise you, Anne Applebaum said. Paul Lay's account of England's first and only experiment with Republican government will give you some new ways of thinking about England and Englishness. Claudio Sant, Unworthy Republic, The Dispossession of Native Americans and the Road to Indian Territory. Elijah Gould, this is a familiar story, but Claudio Sant takes a new and breathtakingly original approach. This is an extremely well-written, gripping book with a fascinating interpretive spin. Camilla Townsend, Fifth Son, A New History of the Aztecs. Fifth son is a feat of high order, Sujit Sivasundram said, intellectually and imaginatively. A moving and immersive account of the Mexica people that is a gripping read, but also a book of scholarly value. Thanks to Camilla Townsend's stunning use of Nahuatl sources.
The jurors went back to these titles time and time again, rereading, reassessing, and then trying to work out which our top three would be, which is very, very difficult. We came together on a Zoom call earlier to discuss these 10, and I was joined by Anne Applebaum from Poland, Lise Doucette, who is in Kabul in Afghanistan, Elijah Gould from New Hampshire, and Sujit Sivasundaram from Cambridge, and we discussed these works in great detail. We talked through all 10, trying to look at not only their merits, all of them were outstanding books, but trying to work out what the resonance was, how fantastic and original the scholarship was, and I think most importantly of all, to work out their general readership for non-specialist audiences. Really good history books need to tick the boxes and to be gold-plated for specialist historians, but also to be able to reach over to wider audiences who might learn and be interested in the topics that are being written about. And I think it's fair to say all these 10, and in fact many of the books we considered this year, were absolutely in that category. But trying to work out how to make history popular and to have a wider impact, I think, was very important this year, as it is every year for the Cundill Prize. Before I announce the 3 finalists, let's take a quick look at the upcoming digital events programme for the Cundill's History Prize inaugural festival. And the 3 finalists will, of course, feature very prominently in this. We very much hope you're going to be able to join us for these events later in the year. But now it's my pleasure to announce the 3 finalists of the 2020 Cundill History Prize. First up, Vincent Brown, Tacky's Revolt, the story of an Atlantic slave war. This is a masterful telling of revolts in the Caribbean in the 18th century, where Vincent Brown talks us through how the slave trade had manifested and exploited West Africa and brought many thousands, if not millions of people across the Atlantic to work as slaves. He explores the ideas about Black Africans in the Caribbean and the ways in which they were shackled into the models of colonialism that led to revolts. The book centres on Tacky's revolt in the 1760s, which is a big uprising that brought colonialism to its knees and for a brief moment looked like it would change the way in which transatlantic slave trade, settlers, both of slaves and of black people, but also of white settlers, would be fundamentally transformed. The book is incredibly resonant, of course, today in 2020, and it's a wonderful read. Next, William Dalrymple's The Anarchy, The Relentless Rise of the East India Company. This looks at the extraordinary way in which a private company founded in England at the beginning of the 17th century was able to become not just a dominant commercial power, but an extraordinarily important political and military force in South Asia. The way in which the East India Company dominated the Indian Peninsula is a classic tale of corporate greed, of excess, and of the way in which those who are less fortunate get exploited by those higher up the food chain. The central point comes when Robert Clive is able to take over the fisc, takes over the purse of Bengal in the 1750s and 1760s, leading to an extraordinary tale of corporate boom and bust. And I think it's fair to say that as well as being beautifully written, this book also tells us something very important about the way in which inequalities, the way in which exploitation, and the ways in which, again, attitudes about race have shaped our modern world. And finally, Camilla Townsend, Fifth Son, A New History of the Aztecs. The story of the Aztecs is almost always told through the lens of the Spanish who conquered Central America and beyond from the late 1490s onwards. Camilla Townsend's extraordinary book tells the story through the lens of Nahuatl local sources. And it's as much a story of detective work as it is showing the extraordinary skills of a historian putting together technical elements of sources that have been spread around, that have been not really properly read and exploited, to tell us a very, very different story of that familiar tale from a different lens. It's a groundbreaking work, astonishing in the way I think that it makes us think about, again, similar stories of colonialism, about new identities, and about the way in which history itself is written. To hear what my fellow jurors have to say about these three outstanding works of history, please head to the Cundill History Prize website straight after this, where you'll find videos, extracts, author interviews, and much more there. So these three books are very worthy as finalists. We could have picked any of the 10, I suspect, in our deliberations, but it was wonderful to work with jurors who have such wide range of knowledge, of experiences, and views, I think, about how we should look at the past for what it is. We don't have to be bound by the modern day to find topics that are interesting, but each of these three books shows extraordinary persistence by scholars working with difficult materials, the narrative qualities of being able to tell stories in a way that makes you turn the page, and also tells us something about parts of the world or peoples or events that perhaps should be better known when we think about history. And for that reason, there are our top three. It's a wonderful thing to be involved with a prize like this, to celebrate non-fiction writing. It's been a very difficult year for everybody, but I think it's a special shout out for historians. Those of us who work in archives have had our libraries closed, and the wonderful curators and librarians and those who protect the written word or visual images have had a very, very difficult time over the course of this year. So I hope that we'll be back in rude health, all of us, in 2021. But it's been a pleasure to be involved in the prize and to read so many outstanding books. I take my hat off to all the histories and all the historians whose books we read this year. It's a kaleidoscope of talent, and of all the things that are wrong in the world, I think it's fair to say that history writing is not one of those. So I encourage all of you to keep supporting history, keep supporting historians, keep supporting the humanities, and those involved in the teaching and propagation, particularly your local libraries, to make sure that those aren't victims of cuts that may lie ahead. Anyway, on that note, I should thank you again for joining us today, and I hope many of you will pick up these books, all those on the shortlist and the long list, and do please join us for the announcement of the final winner later on in the year, and also to the Cundill History Prize Festival in early December. And please, above all, head to the prize website for now. Thank you. Goodbye.